Shabbat Shalom Lekulam. The devil is not going to be allowed to win. Let's put it that way. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom to all our Israelites from the four corners of the earth. Hope that you can hear us well in Pal Talk and on the radio station worldwide. Greetings to all the brothers and sisters, and you heathens too. Get out your paper and pens, laptops, smartphones, etc. Worldwide Chronicle of the Messianic Hebrew Israelites class is in session. If I can still be heard, give me a 7, please. Okay, good. I hate to do this on this laptop, but what can I do? All right. This is the invention of the Israeli. How the modern Jewish state of Israel came to be, part 1. Now, if you ever wondered how Israel, the Holy Land, Zion, could today be seen to sponsor the largest gay parade in the holy city of Jerusalem, the gay parade in Tel Aviv, and the slut walk. We're about to look into that matter. It's a simple thing. This is not Jerusalem of old. This is a modern day invention that we're going to examine very, very closely. A question. Where did the modern day Israeli come from, historically, as well as in spirit and in truth? Is there a difference between nationality and religion? Yes, it is. A nationality requires that you identify with a land, a language, and a culture. We as Hebrew Israelites, all 12 tribes, identify with our biblical homeland, Zion, the Holy Land, as defined by our holy OvadiYah, consists of all the lands from the Nile to the Euphrates. Not this little small sliver of land that has come to be identified with the modern Jewish state of Israel. Moving right along. That was a famous quote by Gamal Abdel Nasser, the second president of the modern Egypt, who stated, quote, "You, the Jews, will never be able to live here in peace, because you left here black, but came back white. We cannot accept you." Why do you believe that Gamal Nasser took this position? We know that was speaking the truth. Here's why. Let's take a look at the history related to this subject. The real truth about the inhabitants of this land and the history of this land can be found in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. Let's turn there. Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, verses 15 through 68. And it reads on this wise. Just 1 minute. Wait a minute. Hallelujah. If I can still be heard, give me a 7, please. Okay. Moving right along. Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, verses 15 through 68. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yah our Elohim, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy kneading trough. Cursed shall thou be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of your land, the increase of thy cows and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shall thou be when you cometh in, and cursed shall thou be when you goeth out. Yah shall send upon you a cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou settest thy hand to do, until you be destroyed, until you perish quickly, because of the wickedness of your doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. Yah shall make the pestilence cling unto thee, until he have consumed you from off the land to which thou goest to possess it. Yah shall smite thee with a consumption, and with a fever, and with an inflammation, and with an extreme burning, and with a sword, and with a blight, and with mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be as bronze or brass, and the earth that is under your feet iron. Yah shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon you, until you be destroyed. The Lord will make the rain of thy land powder and dust from heaven, and shall come down, and you shall be destroyed. Yah shall cause thee to be smitten before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. And thy carcass shall be food unto the fowls of the air, and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall drive them away. Yah will smite thee with the ball of Egypt, and with the tumors, and with the scab, and with the itch, thereof thou canst not be healed. Yah shall smite thee with madness, and blindness, and astonishment of heart. Thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in your ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save you. Thou shalt be betrothed a wife, and another man shall lie with her, and thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before your eyes, and shall not be restored. Shall not be restored. Excuse me, lost my place. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation whom thou knowest not eat up. And thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. Yah shall smite thee in the knees and in the legs with a sore boil that cannot be healed from the sole of thy foot up to the top of your head. Yah shall bring thee and yet thy king, whom thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation whom neither you nor your fathers have known. And thou shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword amongst the nations, to whom Yah shall lead thee. Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field, and shalt gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them. You shall have olive trees throughout all the borders, but thou shalt not anoint thyself with the oil, for thine olive shall cast its fruit. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. All thy trees and fruit of thy land shall the locust consume. The sojourner who is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and you shall come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearest not unto the voice, hearkenest not unto the voice of Yah, thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, upon thy seed forever, because you serve not Yah our Elohim with joyfulness, with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, whom Yah shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in lack of all things, that he shall put the yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Hold on a second. Okay. That thee has destroyed thee. Moving on down, I'm gonna skip some. I'm going to skip down to verse 63. Worldwide dispersion. And it shall come to pass that as Yah rejoiced over you to do you good, and to multiply you, so that Yah will rejoice over you to destroy you, and to bring you to nothing. And ye shall be plucked from the land to which thou goest to possess it. And Yah shall scatter thee amongst all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thy father have known, neither you or thy father have known, even wood and stone. And amongst these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But Yah shall give thee there a trembling heart, and a failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have no assurance of your life. In the morning thou shalt say, would Yah it were evening. And at evening thou shalt say, would Yah it were morning. For the fear of thine heart, wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes thou shalt see. And Yah shall bring thee into Egypt again in ships, or with ships, by the way whereof I spoke unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there you will be sold unto your enemies, for male and female slaves, and no man shall buy thee. If I can still be heard, would you give me a 7, please? Okay, good. This is what happened to us. We as the Hebrew Israelites, we were taken from our land into captivity to the four corners of the earth. Yet we have another that has appeared. We have another that has appeared, and through all types of plots and conspiracies and sorcery and all types of dark things, in league with Satan the devil, someone has taken our place. The present day inhabitants of this land that you see having these gay parades and these slut walks and all the other manner of wickedness that you see here in the land today is not true Israel. They are not Israel at all. Let's turn to the book of Revelations 2 and 9. Revelations 2 and 9. Revelations 2 and 9, and it reads on this wise. Quote, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them who say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. So let's take a look at this. Roots, origins, invention, fabrication, cloning of the modern day Israelite Jew as the biblical descendants of the ancient children of Israel. Let's take a look at an introduction to the sponsors of the creation of this modern day Israelite Jew. We had to always think in terms of who were the masterminds of these things. All we need to do is turn to the Rothschilds for a great deal of inspiration and understanding about how we left here black, but we came back white. Here's a short clip of about 15 minutes where I'm going to let the horse itself, Lord Rothschild, explain some of the things that pertain to how they became in control of this land. And I can verify some of these things because I've been there. I've seen some of their holdings, some of the places that they've named after their families, where some of the Rothschilds are buried. Let's take a look at what he has to say. It's about 15 minutes long. Let me put this link in the room. Hold on. Then I'll elaborate on it later. Just a minute. Bear with me. If you could access this link, give me a 7 in the room, please. Okay, the name of it is Lord Rothschild Discusses How His Family Created Israel. Full interview. It's about 15 minutes and 56 seconds long. Lord Rothschild discusses how his family created Israel. Full interview. If you can access that link, give me a 7 in the room, please. You can access that link. Give me a 7 in the room. Okay. Just a second. Let me get it. This is not what I want. Hold on. Just 1 second. Okay. Counting back from 5 to 0. 5. Mute yours and we'll play it from here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Play.
It's 67 words long, it's 100 years old, and it changed the course of history for the Middle East and the Jewish people. The Balfour Declaration, the expression of the British government's support for a Jewish home in Palestine, was sent by British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to the second Lord Rothschild. I'm here in Buckinghamshire at Waddesdon Manor to speak with the fourth Lord Rothschild about the Balfour Declaration, what it means for Britain, for the Jewish people, and the Rothschild family.
The Foreign Office, November the 2nd, 1917. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's Government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
So it's possibly the most famous letter in modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words. Dear Lord Rothschild. Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter?
It's an interesting question because he was very interested in ornithology, although he became interested in Zionism. I think the reason was this, that it was primarily a movement from Eastern Europe, that they didn't clarify who was in charge of that movement. And
right.
In addition, it was after all in Great Britain, so they felt that the Rothschild family should be the one to whom it was addressed. And Walter was Lord Rothschild, and he was a Zionist. And those really are the background reasons.
So Walter received the Balfour Declaration, and I have a copy here. And I wonder if I could possibly ask you to read it for us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm going to put on my spectacles to make sure I read it accurately. His Majesty's Government do with favour the establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object. It being clearly understood that nothing should be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours, Arthur Balfour.
And here it is, the Balfour Declaration. What do you feel when you see it here?
I genuinely think it's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people. If you think it took 3,000 years to get to this.
Listen to that line.
You say, how did this miracle happen? It's the most incredible piece of opportunism. I mean, if you think you had an impoverished would-be scientist, Hein Weizmann, who somehow gets to England.
Somehow.
Meets a few people, including the members of my family, seduces them. He has such great charm and conviction.
Right.
He gets to Balfour, and he unbelievably persuades Balfour and Lloyd George, the Prime Minister, and most of the ministers, that this idea of the national home for Jews should be allowed to take place. I mean, it's so unlikely. And then he, starts to fight a difficult battle with the British cabinet, and this letter goes through 5 drafts, as you know. And in the end, it comes out as a rather compromising letter. I mean, the essential point is there for the Jewish community to pass on to. You have the first bit, which promises a national home rather than the national home, and then you have the bit that nothing that's to be done should in any way harm the Arab community. But you come back to the big point, which is that this is perhaps the greatest event in Jewish life for thousands of years.
Yeah, I bet it was.
It took place.
And of course the Rothschild family then as now filled 2 roles, because it wasn't just a leader of diaspora Jewry, it also played a very significant role in the early years of the establishment of the pioneer communities in Israel as well.
There were 2 branches of the Rothschild family primarily concerned. One in France, through Baron Edward Rothschild, who was the one who responded to the Russian programs in the 1880s. In England, there was a divide. Some of the Rothschilds, in particular Baron Edward's son, James, known as Jimmy, had come from France, partly because of the Dreyfus case and his horror about what had happened, to live in England. He was educated at Cambridge University. And he married an English girl, Mrs. James Rothschild, and she became a leader at a very young age. She was only 17 when she started writing to Weizmann and introducing him to the British establishment. Other Rothschilds felt it was better to be assimilated into English life, and although they retained their interest in Judaism and Jewish life, they didn't think it was a good thing that this national home should be established in Israel. So there's something that divided my family, as with many other families.
I wonder, as somebody who moves in the highest echelons of British society and is very close to Israel, whether you in your life feel a tension between concern for Israel and loyalty to Britain?
No, I don't personally feel that. I mean, I've been completely committed to Israel since the early 1960s, and I've been there every year since. So, I don't feel that conflict, but I, of course, feel a huge loyalty to Great Britain.
Just tell us a little bit more about
Lord
Rothschild, because he was an unusual and colourful character.
He was a deeply eccentric man, but from a very early age his passion was collecting. He rode a bike during the park on a giant tortoise. He had a zebra carriage.
A carriage pulled by zebras?
Yes. He collected on a massive scale birds, insects, fleas, butterflies.
The largest single collection created by a single individual.
I think that's true. I think certainly in Great Britain, I think probably anywhere, he was the greatest collector of ornithological material.
His niece, Miriam, writes that for 2 years, as one of his eccentricities, he didn't open any of the letters that were sent to him and stuffed them away into wicker baskets. And it does make you wonder what would have happened if the Balfour Declaration, the letter had been one of those letters that he'd actually,
That's true. At that stage, and it's very difficult to quite understand why, he had taken a deep interest in what was happening about the possibility of Balfour Declaration. So maybe those letters would have got to the top of his part.
I just want to revisit for a moment your cousin Dorothy, you mentioned. who at an extraordinarily young age, still in her teens, played such a critical role as a go-between and a facilitator for Chaim Weizmann. Can you say a little bit about that?
She married my cousin Jimmy when she was 17.
So this is your cousin Dolly.
Yeah, Mrs. Jones.
And from her teenage years onwards, she was a major supporter of Israel.
Major supporter. I mean, she worshipped her husband, who'd been deeply committed, son of Baron Edmore. It was due to him, I think, that she became interested. But once she became interested, she became passionately interested. After his death, she became even more committed. She just wanted to carry out his wishes and what he cared deeply about. And then she had her own personality, a deeply good human being who was quite unselfish. She devoted herself to this place, to Israel, and to a few friends, and had a wonderful life. And you can read letters from her to Weizmann and from Weizmann to her when she was only 17. And what she did, which was crucially important, was to connect up Weizmann with the British establishment.
And she also trained him in how to deal. She helped educate him how to.
And it's extraordinary at that age, but she did tell Weizmann, how to kind of integrate, how to insert himself into British establishment life, which he learned very quickly.
So I'm here in the Waddesdon Manor archives, where there is a treasure trove of remarkable documents from the time of the Balfour Declaration. We have the correspondence here between the teenage Dorothy and her husband James, and it's really a love story. Here Dorothy is writing to James. She says, "Jimmy, I thought I would not like one day to pass without giving you a piece of news you have never heard before. I love you." But of course their correspondence wasn't just romantic correspondence. Here we have detailed letters describing her dealings with Zionist leaders, her advice and her suggestions regarding the conferences of the Zionist movement. And here we have a letter that the young Dorothy, still not 20, sent to Dr. Chaim Weizmann, where she's talking about the meetings that she's arranged for him. And as we've heard, she was helpful in training and preparing him to enter into the highest echelons of British society to advance the cause of the Zionist movement. And she was an important character in your life as well. She really introduced you to Israel.
She was a crucially important character in my life. I became a trustee of the Yad Hanadi over 50 years ago.
Which is the Rothschild Philanthropic Foundation.
Yes, the Foundation. And I think I first went in 1962.
Can you share with us your sense of what things have been changing in Israel since that first visit?
Yes, as Israel, I think, became more and more successful in all sorts of ways, industrially successful, absorption successful, technologically successful, great universities, the problems with the wars that took place, being the clearest examples of security, became more paramount. And so you did see a shift in Israel from kind of the liberal Western place that it had been in the early 60s to something of a very different character. And you also have a shift, of course, between communities in Israel. I mean, Israel is a patchwork of different immigrants from different countries. And you have the religious, you have the non-religious, you have a town like Tel Aviv, which is attractive to the kind of business community, to what I would call ordinary city life. And then you have Jerusalem, which remains a very religious city, and full of conflict between Arab neighbours and itself.
Those internal issues within the fabric of Israeli society, one of the main focuses of Yad HaNadiv. Can you mention just one or two of the projects that feel to you most significant?
Yes, we do a great deal of work on education, a great deal of academic work. We keep going at Ramat HaNadiv, the garden where Baron Edmond was eventually buried. We're on the point of building the new National Library of Israel. Two unexpected ones, perhaps. If you take the Orthodox community, it's important that they have employment. And we're trying to develop programs which is possible for them to undertake. Similarly, we have a problem with Arab unemployment, and we set up jointly with the government employment centres to facilitate greater employment of Arabs within Israel. So we're an active foundation trying to help with these fissures in Israeli life and do some good.
And we're sitting here looking forward to the 100th anniversary of this significant letter. If I can just ask you to think about the next centennial, 100 years' time, and just maybe share some of your hopes, your aspirations about where Israel will be.
What does one hope for? One, of course, hopes for a peaceful relationship with Israel's neighbours, and that's going to be the most difficult matter of all to achieve. But even now you can see, with the disarray in the Middle East, and the importance of relationships that Israel is developing, not only with Jordan, but also with Egypt, and indeed with Saudi Arabia, even if they're not publicized because of the Sunni-Shiite war, there's hope. And I think if you take the need of Arab nations to have intelligence help, and if on the other hand you take compassion and generosity coming from Israel to Palestinian territories and its less fortunate neighbours, there are grounds for optimism, and I am an optimist.
Lord Rothschild, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Come on back up in the room. I never heard so many lies in one 15-minute segment. Now, he made that sound like it was so positive. But what we did hear, more than what he was actually saying out of his lips, was how they have designed and are designing the way that what they call the modern Jewish state of Israel is going to be. Forget about the Israelites that were here before. They've completely taken that idea over, at least in their own minds, these Rothschilds, and are redesigning it as a European, basically Caucasian Jewish state that I've read in certain places that what they actually doing, they plan to foment wars and conflicts in this area until they can claim the land back that was the original biblical Israel, from the Nile to the Euphrates. This is what they're doing. He can say all that what he wants, but from the way they are executing things, that's what they're doing. They're not trying to share anything. They're trying to make sure that this so-called Jewish state is white, it is European, and if at all possible, they would like to wipe out any trace of the biblical Israelites. You can see it in the way that they go about how they design. We've been to that Ramat HaNadiv that he just mentioned. It's a place about less than an hour from here. We used to pass by there all the time before we moved this way. But it's like it's a national park, and that whole area, the different towns in that area, they have them named after some of their children. Edward Rothschild, which is the one that's buried up there on that mountain at Ramanadav, he had two sons. One's name is Benyamina. There's a town right next to Ramanadav by this name. And another one is Zaqyn Yaakov, in memory of Yaakov. Zaqyn Yaakov, because one of the Rothschild sons died early or some sickness. So they named the area after him. And this is a very, very rich area, very affluent. American, by the way, and Brits, particularly. So they have a plan that they're executing. They have, if it's left up to them, there will be no trace of the biblical Israelites left in this land in a very short time. They plan to militarily conquer what is now Jordan and Iraq and all the rest of those countries to the east that currently occupy what was the original borders of the biblical Israel. You know, they're making the Israeli military superior. That's what their idea is, to make them superior to where no one can touch them. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to do their thing. The Rothschilds, the Illuminatis, and all that connection that they have, their plan is to turn this into heaven on earth for white folks. They're going to get rid of the Arabs, they're going to get rid of everybody else, and you know they don't want us here, but they ain't got no choice. You know, it's Yah's plan as opposed to their plan. Moving right along. Let's see here. Just a minute. So who are the modern day Israelites? How many nationalities make up the modern day Israeli Jewish people? The present day population of the modern Jewish state of Israel, as they call it, consists of the following. You have the so-called Ashkenazis, which are the white European Jews, the Sephardim, which are the Jews that come from places like Spain, the Mizrahi Jews, which are Middle Eastern descent, you know, from around Iraq and Kurdistan and all these places in and around it. They just picked up whoever they could, you know, and converted them over to what they call Judaism. Ethiopian Jews. You have a small Arab population. You have what you call the Druze, which is, I don't know, they're confusion. You know what I'm saying? They're kind of like a mix between a few different religions. Islam, Judaism, and something else. Circassians and other minorities. So what is it? Who is a Jew? Where does this word itself come from? We know for a fact that there was no such thing as a J in Hebrew. So where did this word Jew come from? What is the historical origin of the word? The term Jew, for your information, was coined by two European Jews by the name of Moses Mendelssohn, Gotthold Ephraim Lessing, and his name was Wilding. I don't have his first name. In the 1700s. Now listen to that. wasn't biblical. There was no such thing as the word before the 1700s. Germany in the 1700s. So how did they come up with this? We know that the word Jew itself is, a contraction of the word Judah and Hebrews. So they just decide they slam it together and say Jew. The invention of the Jewish people. Moving right along. Again, when you think about it, how did we leave the land black and come back white? So with the financial and political help of the Rothschilds and others, they who are today identified as the Jewish people and dwell in what is defined as the modern Jewish state of Israel. We know how we, the biblical Hebrew Israelites, were expelled from our homeland. And for any newcomers who don't know how we were thrown out of our holy land, here's how. We were thrown out for failing to obey the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High Yah. So he kicked us out of our own land. The exile and the captivity of the northern 10 tribes of Israel by the Assyrians, and the exile of Judah and Benjamin when the Roman general Titus sacked Jerusalem in 70 AD and finished the task by 135 AD. Revelations 3 and 9. Let me read that. Revelations, the book of Revelations 3 and 9 reads on this wise. If I can still be heard, would you give me a 7, please? If I can still be heard, give me a 7. Hallelujah. Okay. Revelations 3 and 9, and it reads on this wise. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. We the Hebrew Israelites, hallelujah, hallelujah for that. Told our Abba, it ain't going to turn out like they think it's going to turn out. Oh no, they got another thing coming on that. We the Hebrew Israelites left Zion black and came back white. Let's take a closer look at how this came to pass. The truth, Rothschild and the Khazar history. Okay, this is the name of the YouTube documentary. The truth. For the radio listener office, the name, audience, the name of the video is The Truth, Rothschild and the Khazar history documentary. It's about 32 minutes long. Let me put the link in the room for all others to get this link. Hold on a second. Let me put it in the room. If you can access this link, give me a 7 in the room, please. You can access that link, give me a 7. Okay. We're going to count back from 5. We're going to count back from 5 to 0. We're going to look at, like I said, we're going to look at about 32 minutes and 42 seconds. I think it'll give you a lot of good insight. Let's count back from 5 to 0. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hit play.
Any further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker tonight. He's also a radio show host, and I'll let him give you the details on that. And so here you have it, Mr. Jack Otto.
Thank you, friends. 65 years ago today, God Almighty put me on this earth, and I believe it's to fight against this new world order. Thank you. We are being cornered like cattle into a pen.
All right now.
Squeezed down. And we're never really going to be free people unless we're brave. Because this was only the land of the free as long as it was the home of the brave. And this started a long time ago with people that go back to the 4th century. Let me tell you about the flight of the Khazar warriors out of northern Turkey in 500 AD. They were a despicable bunch. You could go to the king of the Khazars and rent an army from him. An army of 40 or 50,000 men. But it didn't matter what kind of a deal you struck with their monarch. He wasn't called a king, he was called Zaqyn. Once the battle was done, they rape and pillage. Doesn't matter what kind of agreement you had with the king. That's the way it ended up. And so as a consequence, people in the area garnered a great deal of animosity for these Khazar warriors. And in 500 AD, they were driven out, and as they came down south out of Turkey, some fled to the west into Romania and Hungary and became the Gypsies. The rest followed their monarch, the Zaqyn, up into the steppes of Russia, and north of there to the Caucasus Mountains. And as settled in there, they quite easily enslaved the relatively peaceful agrarian Slavic folks that were indigenous to the area. Then they came under pressure to take sides in a growing contention around them. Coming down from the north was Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and coming up from the south was Islam. And they knew that if they succumbed to pressure from either of those to join their organization and embrace their philosophy, it would surely offend the other. And so what they did was a politically expedient maneuver. He called in all the religious leaders of the area, and he got their input. And after the input, he announced, for me and my people, we're talking about 20 million people, about 4,000 nobility, for me and my people, we choose to become Jews. Now, this was not a heartfelt conversion. This was not something that was deep in their breasts, that they felt they needed to make a conversion because they thought that was the proper way to serve the Creator. This was something that was done as a political expediency. Mm-hmm. And in the course of studying about their new religion, and you do have to study it even if you're only going to charade, it is absolutely necessary to study about it so that you can fake it. And in the course of doing so, they came across a character with whom they could truly identify. It was Lucifer, the morning light, that fell from grace and became Satan, the adversary.
All right now.
Formed an inner circle within Judaism dedicated to the forces of evil. Let's define terms. What is a Jew? if you look back in your Old Testament, your Bible, there was 12 Hebrew tribes. The 10 northern tribes were called the House of Israel. The 2 southern tribes were called Benjamin and Judah. More properly pronounced Judah, because we didn't get the harder sound to the J until about 200 years ago. So this is what I would call real Jews, people from the tribe of Judah. And when we start talking about the New World Order, we are not talking about these people at all. We're talking about these Khazar warriors that only pretended to embrace Judaism. And so today, we find that about 92% of the people who claim to be Jews really aren't. They don't have a drop of Semitic blood in their veins.
Tell it.
They are Khazar warriors with a new bent on life and a goal to conquer, to rape, and to pillage. And that philosophy has come down over time, and we see how effectively they have implemented it throughout history. Now, when they pretended to embrace Judaism, they drew upon the real Jews for some education. And they used the Hebrew alphabet as phonics to codify their Khazar language. And so now we look at that language called Yiddish or Yiddish and find
that
it is not Hebrew. It only appears to be. Now these people have run into some trouble over time. In 965 AD, they were overrun by the Varganians, which was Swedish-ruled Slavic people. Varganian is the Russian word for Vikings. And they were militarily defeated, which curbed their expansionist philosophy for some time. And then in 1140, they were literally overrun by the Mongols for Kublai Khan and Genghis Khan. And they were driven down into Eastern Europe. Their monarch, the king, or Zaqyn as he was called, fled to Spain and Portugal. Now, because these folks were a darker skinned people with black hair and brown eyes, it was easier for them to fit in with the folks of Spain and Portugal and Italy and Sicily than they could other places where they stood out and looked markedly different. And they took a great deal of control, especially in Spain and Portugal. So much so that they were discovered in conspiracy, because they worked together to get themselves, one of them, into a position of authority where that person can work in tandem with others to get more of their people in authority and positions of power, and working it up to where they're running the show and milking everybody else. After they fled down into Europe, there was one of them, a guy by the name of Meyer Amschel Bauerberg, who decided to enter into clandestine world government. Meyer Amschel Bauerberg used the symbol outside of his father's silversmith shop, a large red shield, as inspiration for an alias. And he went by the name of Rothschild. That's German language for red shield.
All right now.
Now Rothschild was born in 1743, and when he was in his late 20s, he formulated a financial enterprise with 12 other entrepreneurs with the dedication, with the interest and the intent of conquering everybody and everything. But we're going to do it with fractional reserve banking, and that turned out to be a very successful tool.
Listen to him.
We found out about fractional reserve banking at the Bank of Amsterdam in 1610 when, like all fiat money inflations, it came to a roaring bust. And they learned from that and wanted to implement it wherever they could so that they could be the ones that benefited from that enterprise. Now, Meyer Amschel Bauerberg had 5 sons, and he took these 5 sons, and as they became of age, he sent them to foreign countries to operate not an independent banking system, but one in conjunction with the rest of their people. A system whereby Nathan, who went to London, and soon proved himself to be shrewd. There was one named Coleman who passed himself off as Carl, and I think he went to Amsterdam. Jacob called himself James at Paris. And we find that throughout the world, in 5 big locations, they had banking institutions that had a very clever idea. And if these people weren't so evil, it would have been easier to admire what they did. But they had a system whereby you could go to one of the banks in one country and deposit gold with them and get a receipt for it. And then go to the foreign country where they had another office, take that receipt, and get your gold. And you didn't run the risk of losing your gold on the high seas, either to wind or to pirates or anything else. So in a way it was kind of a clever scheme, however. These people were despicably evil, and their intent to make money was to not just put themselves for their head, but to hold others back.
Mm-hmm. Slick.
Now, Meyer Amschel Bauerberg lived to be, he lived from 1743 to the year 1812, and that's why we got that 1812 overture, was to honor him. His associates respected him and wanted to salute his passing. Meyer Amschel Bauerberg changed his name to Rothschild, and he also dropped the Bauerberg suffix and called himself Bauer, closer to home where he lived there at 148 Judenstrassen in Frankfurt, Germany. They later moved down to 148 Judenstrassen, and it was from there that he was able to do much of his chicanery. And he got in league with a guy, William the Ninth of Hesse-Kassel. Now, if you remember about the Hessian warriors were something that were warrior slaves that was purchased by the King of England from this landgrave of Hesse-Kassel. They were purchased for the price of $12,000, and much of that money was earned by just capturing these people through actual out-and-out brigand slavery and holding them until they could be sent to the king, and which they were told, don't ever let those colonists get a hold of you. They will skin you alive. Well, when the Hessian soldiers got captured by one of us, one of our forefathers, they started crying, oh, please don't skin me. And they said, well, skin you? We're not going to do that. Then they realized they'd been lied to. Many of them came over and joined the revolutionary forces of the Americans, and a lot of them escaped out to the west and melded in and became what we might call squatters out there in the wide open west like the rest of us did. Now, they did a pretty good job of interfacing with the Native Americans out there and were able to garner some respect for them. So it was among these same people that brought about so much of the war that we see in front of us throughout history. It was fomented primarily for profits, and to scare us into believing that the only way that we could circumvent this war, to get this behind us, is if we were to form a league or United Nations. Now, the first attempt was when they had their man Napoleon. Now, Napoleon was the Emperor of France, but he he came from Corsica, and it was shortly after Corsica was brought into the French Empire that he was given the nod to become the emperor and to engage his war. Now, this was shortly after that French Revolution. You know, I'm going to go back and take a step back here and talk about that French Revolution for a moment. See, it was shortly after a man named Adam Weishaupt, in May 1st of 1776, formulated an organization called the Illuminati. This was done on behalf of Baron Rothschild, and it was for the express purpose of fomenting their plans and executing their goals for conquest. Now, Adam Weishaupt encapsulated a game plan to bring about this world government, and in his game plan he had it mentioned in there that they were to take France in the year 1789. Now, these plans were formulated into writing and translated by one of the Ingolstadt University professors, one of Professor Weishaupt's cohorts, a guy by the name of Xavier von Schreck. Now, Schreck translated these into French so that they could be taken to Paris and Silesia. Now, there was a courier, a guy by the name of Lanz, who had been an evangelist minister, but quit God and decided to become an Illuminati agent and a courier, and he was taking these materials by horseback through Bavaria. In a place called Regensburg, he was struck by lightning, and it killed both him and his horse. And people found this dead man and his horse with documents in the pouch, and these documents were passed up the chain of command to the Elector of Bavaria, who got to wondering, is there really a game plan out here to conquer the whole world?
Not only
so he staged simultaneous raids on Rothschild's associates, primarily on Weishaupt's associates, and found a great deal of corroborating evidence, enough to convince him that there truly was a game plan out there to take the whole world. And there were 6 points to their game plan. They wanted the abolition of all religion, the abolition of property rights, of inheritance, and the worst one was down at the bottom of the list, the abrogation of the family. Now, we can see how that was implemented in Red China. Men went to one dormitory, women went to another dormitory, boys were here and girls were here, and the family was totally destroyed, and they used that to brainwash those people. When you got kids with no control over them except the one facilitator or his associates, the children are at their mercy. And it's planned for here, for us, for our children, for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren.
All right now. You know it is.
They intend to show no mercy. Now, this formulation of the Illuminati led them down the road to this game plan wherein they are working diligently to take over the whole world. And in the course of doing so, when this courier was found, the Elector of Bavaria, one Theodor von Dalberg, decided after he staged those simultaneous raids that he was going to contact every head of church and state in all of Europe and gave them a translation of the documentation that was found in the pouches of that dead courier, that apostate minister named Lanz. And so it was after the Napoleonic War when Napoleon ran into Lord Wellington at Waterloo and was stomped. Now, this would have been a big setback for Mr. Rothschild, but Mr. Rothschild had one of his associates following the war along. And this associate sent a message back to him by carrier pigeons.
Listen to him.
And the carrier pigeons let him know that Wellington had won. So what he did was he was in Paris at the time, and he jumped in a boat, and he had some men taking through some terribly dangerous seas. Too bad he didn't get it right then and there, but nevertheless, he made it to the other shore, to Great Britain, and he sold all of his British financial securities. And then he started acting so scared, and let the rumor out that Napoleon had won. Well, if Napoleon had won, everybody realized that their government was not going to be able to honor its financial obligations, and so they started selling theirs. And at the very depth of that despair, he quietly, surreptitiously, had some of his friends start buying up those worthless securities. And so almost overnight, he increased his wealth by 21-fold. Now, it was time to disappear for a little while. He wasn't really popular because he had put out a false rumor that Napoleon had won. And when people found out that Napoleon hadn't won and they'd sold their government securities based on the lie, they were a little bit disappointed. But Baron Rothschild was in a position now where he could force a reformation of the Bank of England and cause his people to be put in positions of power and authority. And so, as a consequence, it turned out well for him. It turned out way too well for him. So it was after this Napoleonic Wars that they had this big meeting in Vienna. The Rothschilds had his dignitaries assemble others from around the world, and they said, it is the scourge of war that plagues us. And if we're ever to get rid of this scourge of war, we're going to have some kind of Congress where nations can come together and we can live through this modern age. One of the attendees was the Tsar of Russia. And he remembered the documentation that he had gotten from the Elector of Bavaria, and he had studied it. And he knew about this program by the Illuminati to take over the whole world. And he got up in the middle of that meeting and he denounced the whole process. He pointed out that it was Weishaupt's plan to overthrow all governments and religion and take over the world on behalf of his organization. And he was the man personally who shot down the Congress in Vienna. And Rothschild hated him for it. And he swore that he or his heirs one day would destroy the entire Romanov family.
Yes, they did. Children and all.
And we saw that happen. Well, it was before our times. We didn't personally get to see it happen, but we sure have a recording of it in our history books.
That in November
1917.
November 8th of 1917, I believe it was, that they went in and took over, killed the entire Romanov family, the Tsar and all his children. There's some speculation that one daughter, Anastasia, got away, and another son is alleged to have gone off over to Poland and become a military officer under an assumed name. There's lots we don't know about what went on. Lots we probably never will know about what went on. Because everything has been based on deceit, lies, and we find ourselves boxed into corners. based on these untruths. So it was shortly afterwards that they had another man from their group, a guy by the name of Abraham Lincoln, whose real name was Springsteen. And Abraham Lincoln Springsteen went about fomenting the Civil War here. I'd like to call it the War of Northern Aggression because we've been lied to.
I'd have dropped that name too.
So much. We were told that was a war over slavery, but it wasn't. It was a war over states' rights. Two of the southern states, Virginia and North Carolina, had long ago outlawed slavery.
Really?
And yet, it was used to rally northern forces. You know, that's the kind of thing I'd be willing to take part in. I would like to stop slavery wherever it could be found. And I'm sure it appealed to a lot of people to put an end to that despicable act of holding another human being like you would an animal and making them work for whatever you feel like giving them. Now, Abraham Lincoln had right in his cabinet a guy by the name of August Belmont. And August Belmont wasn't his real name. His real name was Schoenberg. He was a Rothschild agent. And down in the other camp, they had a Rothschild relative, a guy by the name of Judah Benjamin, who was the head of the secret police down there. And after that, Abraham Lincoln resented his involvement with these people. And he made a speech in which he said, I feel at this time more fear for my nation than any other time, even during the war. An era of corporations has been enthroned and corruption will grow in high places. And we will end up with the wealth of many aggregated in the hands of the few. Now his resentment resulted in action, and he decided he was going to issue greenbacks. He'd had enough of working with these people, and they would not put up with that. So they sent in one of their own, a guy by the name of John Wilkes Booth, a bad actor, who dispatched Abraham Lincoln so that, and it was done in conjunction with the Jesuits. See, there are so many of these Illuminati organizations out there. The one we just described by Adam Weishaupt was called the Bavarian Illuminati. There was another Illuminati called Avion over in, I believe, in Great Britain. There was one in Switzerland, and there was another one in France, the Grand Lodge Orient de la France. And there's a very important one called the Alumbrados that was formulated in Spain. Now the Alumbrados is Spanish for enlightened ones. And the Alumbrados only existed for about 20 years before they changed their name. They changed their name to the Society of Jesus. They called themselves the Jesuits, and they pledged themselves as the protectorate of the Pope. When you got the Illuminati protecting you, it's the kiss of death.
Kiss of death.
What we find about the time that this Civil War was over, there was a guy who had been born in Boston, Massachusetts, and December 30th, 1809, a guy by the name of Albert Pike. He was an impressive intellect. He was a Harvard graduate back when it really meant something. He was the master of 16 languages, and he was a despicable son of a... because he openly worshipped Satan. He was part of an organization called the Palatalists. He was the one that converted this Knights of the Golden Dawn to the Ku Klux Klan. And he was the author of a book called Morals and Dogma. It is the most revered text among the Masons. And in this text on page 321, Albert Pike said, "It is Lucifer the morning light, whose seething energies you must learn to control or implement. So it was this Albert Pike, the same guy that wrote a letter to his superior in the Illuminati, a guy over in Europe by the name of Giuseppe Mazzini, who was the revolutionary leader. And Giuseppe Mazzini also happened to be the founder of the Mafia.
Oh, well, thank you, sir, for telling us.
This letter that he wrote to Giuseppe Mazzini on August 15 of 1871 outlined 3 world wars. And the first of those world wars was to be fomented between the differences between the German nationalists and the Brits, and end up with the downfall of Tsarist Russia and the rise of communism. Any of us who studied any history at all knows that's exactly how World War I took place. Then World War II was fomented between the Zionists, between the German nationalists again, and the Brits to bring us in. And in World War II, Israel was to be born. And the Zionists were given power. So since the first 2 wars came off just exactly as that letter said, and that letter used to hang right in the British Museum Library until 1977 when Baron Rothschild became a director. And as soon as he was on the board of directors, that letter disappeared from the library. Immediately. But since that letter so clearly delineated the first 2 world wars, I think we have to look at it seriously and take it to heart when it says in there so clearly that the 3rd World War will be fomented between the Zionists and Islam. Does anybody see that materializing today? Every place we look, we can see it happening. And we can see that the power they have here in this country to run things and to pull the nastiest little scams, and America believes it. Because they don't realize who it is that owns the newspapers. They don't realize who it is that owns the television. And sometimes they don't care. As long as there's going to be football on the Monday night and I got beer at hand, that's all that counts. Well, at least for a lot of people. And I think once they find that they have let their children and their grandchildren slip into tyranny, they may regret it. But regrets never come at the beginning. They always come at the end. We can see World War III shaping up just exactly like they planned for us, and not enough of us are doing what's necessary to stop it. Look at all the empty seats we have here. America should be flooded to this cause. They should be interested in what is transpiring. They should be interested in who's doing what and to whom. It was right after World War I that J.P. Morgan was given the job of gaining control of the newspapers. They knew they must be able to control human thought with input. And if you can realize that the human mind is a whole lot like a computer, the old garbage in, garbage out effect takes place. If you can control what people hear and see, then you can pretty much control what they think. And they were able to utilize newspapers and now radio and television for just exactly that purpose. Now, there were 78 newspapers, major ones, that they really needed to get control of, but J.P. Morgan thought if they got 25 of them, that would be enough to control things, but it wasn't. They realized soon afterwards that they had to get all of those newspapers under their control, and we got the likes of guys like David Rockefeller, who announced that he wanted to thank the people of the Washington Post and the New York Times for respecting their pledges of discretion at the CFR and Bilderberger meetings. And he said if it wasn't for their discretion, it would not have been possible to prepare the world for a new world order.
Let's stop it right there. You can look at it, the rest of it on your own. I think you got a good idea. I would suggest to look at the rest. But I think we got a good understanding of the basics. And he even was telling it, wasn't it? So we got some other things to go to, so just a minute. And he even was telling it. Let me give you a little fact about Israel. I want to share this with you. Fact about Israel. Or life in it, put it that way. Did you know that you cannot own land in Israel? Did you know that? You cannot own land in Israel. Nope. Sure can. What you can do, you can lease land. And it can be renewed. The lease can be renewed. But you cannot buy. This is the deal. Depending on what land is involved, you can lease land for either 49 years and 99 years, respectfully. And depending on the terms, the lease can be renewed under certain circumstances, particularly if it's passed down through the family. But you got to renew it. You got to pay. Yeah, it's just like that. But see, that's under the Rothschild system. They own the land. All of it. Every bit. That's how they got that set up. You can lease, but you cannot buy. Now, we often, like I mentioned earlier, we talk about all these different strange, devilish things they do here, like this lag on a bonfire and these gay parades and slut walks and all that kind of stuff. I want to go into a little bit about the demographics of the modern, so-called modern Jewish state of Israel, just to show you how the breakdown goes as far as people and situations here in Israel. Let me get this link in the room, please. Hold on. If you could access this link, give me a 7 in a row, please. Israel. The demographic features of Israel are monitored by the Israel Central Bureau of Statistics. The state of Israel has a population of approximately 8,585,000 inhabitants. That is of September 2016. Broken down like this. According to them, 74.8% of them are Jews, 20.8% are Arabs, while the remaining 4.4% are defined as others. I guess we others. Including family members of Jewish immigrants who are not registered at the Ministry of Interior as Jews, non-Arab Christians, non-Arab Muslims, etc., etc., etc. Generally, population trends in Israel reflect distinct patterns of three subgroups. Non-Haredi, meaning non-religious Jews, around 63% of the population. Haredi Jews, that's the ones that walk around with all the black on. 11.7%. Arabs, 20.7% over the past decade. The Muslim annual population growth has fallen significantly from around 3% to less than 2.2% by 2013. You can look at the charts. You see them there. But it's broken down even more as you look through these statistics. You have, I don't have the statistic right now, but you have so many different people from so many places. That's why this lesson is called The Invention of the Israeli. Because they have this system here. The education system is designed to make you an Israeli. What does it consist of? Not much learning, don't seem like to me. One of the things that's mandatory for you to do, I don't care who you are, if you are a so-called Jewish person, they expect somewhere before you get out of high school for you to make a trip at your parents' expense, to make a trip to Poland. Can you imagine that? Somehow I had to get out of that. No, but you're supposed to go to Poland. Why? Because of the ovens, you know, the Holocaust, the ovens, you know, that they burnt people up, you know, at Auschwitz and, you know, and Bergam, boom, banging, and some of these ovens, you know. Yeah. I mean, it's an expensive trip. It's nonsense. But it was mandatory for anybody that could make it to go there and deal with that. You know what I'm saying? And boo-hoo and cry and weep and, you know, throw themselves down. You know what I'm saying? You know, because think about, you know, the people that was thrown into the ovens and they was made into this and that and experimented on it.
To work on their mind.
To work on their mind, to condition them to be always loyal to the Jewish state. I mean, do whatever it is they need to do. And it does just that. You know, they have, you know, they come back, they be like, ooh. You know, it's just like they've been through hell. You know what I'm saying? You know, we've seen it. You know, and they be all broke down and, you know, and they got several other things like that. You know, join the army is like, and the funny thing about it, you know, it's the honor goes to those who are foolish enough to join the combat units. Yeah. Now the rich don't do that. Now I'm gonna tell you, rich people don't do that. They don't do that. They go behind the desk. They go on those technological situations where they can start them a company when they get out. But the less educated, less upwardly mobile, they want to go join a combat unit. You know what I'm saying? So they can have that prestige of being a paratrooper or being one of these alphabet type, what do you call them? Secret commando kind of folk. Yeah. That's the way it is. And they go for a lock, stock, and barrel. That's how it is.
You're right. It's no joke.
It ain't no joke.
It's real.
They real about that business. But you think about it. Now, where'd they come from? They came from the Hussars, those warriors from the steppes of Europe. So they fit right in. They fit right on in. But they're not the Israelites. By no stretch of the imagination. Got something else for you. It's about 10 minutes long. Hold on a second. Let me get this link in here. This is about 10 minutes and 42 seconds long. It's going to give you a good idea about the Ashkenazi and Khazarian Jews, the truth behind the bloodline, Talmudic wickedness of the Pharisees. Hold on a second. This is about the Khazars and the Ashkenazi Jews. Hold on a second. You can access this link. Give me a 7 in the room, please. Count back. If I can be heard, give me a 7, please. Okay. Count back from 5 to 0. The name of the video is Khazar and Ashkenazi Jews. Khazar and Ashkenazi Jews. 10 minutes and 42 seconds long. I'll give you a second to get those in the radio audience. Khazar and the Ashkenazi Jews. Okay? Count back from 5 to 0. And we're going to hit play. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, play.
In Babylon, Judaism could be perfectly consistent with the teachings of the Pharisees because the Babylonians were immoral as well.
Check it out.
In Christian lands of the West, it became necessary to pretend that many of those teachings did not exist. Even today, religious Jews continue to venerate the Pharisees and their Talmud as the greatest source of light that Judaism will ever know. Yet, living in Christian lands, no Jew can fully perform what the Pharisees commanded. This conflict in Jewish responsibility has created a dilemma over the last 1,000 years from which Jews in the West have not emerged.
Yet even before Maimonides came on the scene in the 12th century, another dilemma was being created in Judaism far to the east. This was a dilemma not concerning the doctrines of the Jews, but over who actually was a Jew.
In their articles on Khazars, the Jewish encyclopedias tell us that in the 8th century A.D., Jewish missionaries ventured north of Babylon to the land of the Khazars between the Caspian and the Black Seas. Khazaria was a vast grassland on what is now the plains of southern Russia, inhabited by a race of merchants, artisans, and warriors of Hunnish Turkish stock. About 740 A.D., the king of the Khazars converted to Judaism and made it the state religion. few centuries, the people of Khazaria convinced themselves that they were not Gentiles after all, but the physical descendants of Abraham. Thus, by the 10th century AD, a nation of proselyte Jews thrived in what is now central Russia. During the Middle Ages, the fierce Mongols from the east and Russians from the north drove the Khazars west out of their ancient homeland. Most settled in Eastern Europe, especially Poland, where they established communities of artisans and traders. Judaism thus became divided into two basic groups which remain today: the Ashkenazim, which are the Khazars of the east, and the Sephardic Oriental, which are Jews of Spain, Turkey, and lands bordering on the Mediterranean. Today, the Ashkenazim, or Khazars, are the vast majority, about 80% of those who call themselves Jews. The two most recent premiers of Israel illustrate these two racial types. Shimon Peres is a Sephardic Jew from authentic Jewish stock. Yitzhak Shamir, like Menachem Begin, is Ashkenazim, or Khazar in origin. In Poland, these ancestors of most modern Jews thrived. In fact, they actually became more zealous Jews than their theological cousins to the west, the Sephardim. The Khazars were fascinated with that mystical aspect of Judaism called Kabbalah. Kabbalah was the Jewish form of ancient Gnosticism, a belief that God is unconscious yet everywhere, revealed in different levels of refinement throughout the universe. Of course, Judaism was always unique among ancient religions in its belief in a single conscious God, a God not only capable of creating the worlds, but of punishing evil and rewarding good. Like Eastern religions, however, the Polish Kabbalists believe that God in his purest form is utterly remote, unknowable, without opinions about right and wrong. Instead, he is being filtered down through many gradations, or sephirot, until it reached Israel. Israel, according to the Kabbalah, was the visible, rational emanation of God in this world. Below Israel was confusion and darkness, represented by demons and the chaotic world of the Gentiles.
What excited the Khazars was that Kabbalah preached revolution. It said that Jews, as superior beings, were destined to rule the world. In the Zohar, which is the written text of Kabbalistic lore, we find the arrogance and ambition of the ancient Pharisees very much alive.
In a typical passage, the Zohar teaches, living soul refers to Israel, who have holy living souls from above, and cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth to the other peoples who are not living soul. Only by the overthrow of the Gentiles, the Zohar asserts, can Israel regain its position as God's Shekinah glory on earth. The Zohar calls Gentiles Amalekites. In a passage typical of many, the Zohar says, they caused the destruction of the temple, so when God reveals himself, they will be wiped off the earth. Redemption will not be complete until Amalek will be exterminated. But once Israel shakes off Gentile dominion and Christian influence, heaven will descend to earth. The Zohar says Israel will fulfill her predestined role, ruling the world under the leadership of her Messiah.
Since the Kabbalah, or Zohar, was not merely a theological system, but taught the overthrow of the existing order, it was natural that before long, Jews should begin to put it into practice. With the age of Voltaire and the so-called Enlightenment during the 18th century, we see a host of Jewish Kabbalists migrating west out of Poland and penetrating the very capitals of Europe. Jewish wonder workers, Bolshems as they were called, Saint Germain, Cagliostro, Frank, Falk, men of vast wealth and mystery came upon the European scene at the end of the 18th century.
In Europe, in the years preceding the French Revolution, the foundations were laid for a new order in the world. Kabbalists such as Adam Weishaupt helped establish the ultra-secret Illuminati, which became a cover for plots and intrigues that would begin the erosion of Christian civilization. At the same time, beginning with Jewish philosopher Moses Mendelssohn, many Jews began to perceive their religion not simply as a means of personal salvation, but as a way to reform society at large. Many Jewish activists said that, starting with such revolutionaries as Moses and the prophets, Israel had always had the social objective of righting injustice and taking the part of the downtrodden. It was the duty of every Jew, they said, to come to the aid of the oppressed working masses, called the proletariat, in their historic struggle against capitalistic bondage. Many Jews thus came out of the ghetto and took part in all the great revolutions of the 19th century, including the Revolution of 1829 and the Revolution of 1848. It is thus not surprising that as the 20th century dawns, we find Jews turning their attentions to the overthrow of one of the last monarchies still opposing Jewish advancement, the Romanov dynasty of Russia. It is well known that the Jews had long hoped to overthrow the Tsar. It was natural then that Jewish philosophers such as Moses Hess and Karl Marx should contrive a philosophy that could make such overthrow possible. It was also natural that international Jewish bankers of New York, London, and Hamburg should finance it. The U.S. State Department, in its 3-volume report on the origins of communism in Russia, published in 1931, reveals how Jewish-controlled German banks under the leadership of Max Warburg conspired as early as 1914 to send large payments to Lenin, Trotsky, and others in their attempts to bring down the Tsar. As part of this conspiracy, Jacob Schiff, head of the New York Jewish banking house of Kuhn Loeb, invested at least $20 million, which would be close to $1 billion today, toward the establishment of Bolshevism in Russia. In its article on socialism, the Jewish Encyclopedia, published in 1905, freely admits that Jews in Russia were ripe for revolution. In Russia, yet socialism has become a movement of the Jewish masses. The later Encyclopedia Judaica tells us the communist movement and ideology played an important part in Jewish life, particularly in the 1920s and 1930s, and during and after World War II. The Judaica, in fact, presents an extensive list of the most powerful Jewish leaders of Bolshevism, which included Trotsky, Sverdlov, Zinoviev, Kamenev, Litvinov, Kaganovich, and many others. The Judaica also tells us just how many Jews filled the communist ranks. It says anti-Semitism drove the bulk of Russian Jewish youth into the ranks of the Bolshevik regime. When the White Russian patriots heroically attempted to regain their freedom from the Jews, the Judaica says compact Jewish masses were utilized by the Bolsheviks to suppress such counter-revolution. Clearly, Jews and native Russians were engaged in a death struggle over the destiny of Russia. Unfortunately, the Jewish masses won. A rare photo shows the First People's Commissariat. From left to right are Uritsky, Trotsky, Zinoviev, Sverdlov, and Kaganovich, all Jews. In 1918, intelligence services of the Western powers were buzzing with reports that communism was an international conspiracy fomented by atheistic Jews. British, Dutch, American, and other intelligence reports confirmed that Jews filled the Bolshevik ranks and that as much as 75% of all Soviet commissars were Jewish. In the Illustrated Sunday Herald of February 8, 1920, Sir Winston Churchill commented on what had almost become public knowledge. There is no need to exaggerate the part played in the creation of Bolshevism by these international and for the most part atheistical Jews. It is certainly a very great one.
All right. Come on back up in the room. Now, I don't know if that sounded confusing or not, but you see, to be Jewish, does that mean you believe in the Most High? That's one thing. That makes it plain, because they kind of make it sound like Judaism has something to do with worshiping. It doesn't. You heard him talk about atheistic Jews. Because he's talking about, let's substitute the word Khazar for Jew. It don't mean that, because it's confusing. At least they want it to sound that way. It only had to do with whoever was backing them with the money to do whatever wicked deed that they wanted him to do. So we understand the entire history now, that it has nothing to do with the Hebrews of the Bible, who believes, worships, obeys the law, statutes, commandments of the Most High Yah and Yahushua HaMashiach. These people don't have, most of these people here don't believe in anything. That's why you have gay pride parade and you have slut walks and all that. They don't believe in anything. We see it all the time. Most of them are atheists, to put it plainly. And that's the root of the matter. So that's why you can see these abominations here in our holy land. It's real simple. You might see anything walking down the street, and I mean that. Anything. And it certainly cannot be nothing attached to the Most High Yah, Yahushua, or any of the rest of it. That's where all this Zohar and all this mess comes from. That's atheistic. Because they are atheistic. Moving right along. Okay, just a second. Which one was that? All right. Just go right along with all of that. You know, they have this so-called holiday here called, they call it Lag BaOmer. Something they created so they could bow down to the fire god. But that same rabbi that they were talking about, that this Lag BaOmer, or this Omer, Lag BaOmer bonfire is significant to, is this same Simeon ben Yochai that says, is this rapist who says it's okay to have sex with young girls or young boys under the age of 3. It's that same one. That's what this bonfire is about. Lag BaOmer. It's a yearly bonfire up on Mount Meron, which is about, actually we can see up there from here. It's right up on top of the mountain above us, that they go there and make this big bonfire to Rabbi Simeon ben Yochai, this pedophile. It's completely out of whack with the account of Scripture that we see in Deuteronomy 28th chapter. In closing, I'm not going to go too long this morning. Try to keep it to 2 hours. I want to read Psalms, the 137th chapter, verses 1 through 9. Psalms 137, verses 1 through 9, and it reads on this wise. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept. When we remembered Zion, we hung our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they that carried us away captive required of us a song. And they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, Sing us one of those songs of Zion. How shall we sing Yah's song in a foreign land, or a strange land? If I forget thee, O Yerushalayim, let my right hand forget her coming. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. That's the end of part 1. That's the end of part 1. Be the Most High's will next week or the week following, whichever. I want to bring part 2. This is just an introduction. I'm going to pass the mic. I do have a weekend review, you know, if we can, a little bit later. Toda Rabah. And with that, I relinquish this mic. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.